Andy, how many races have you won here?
One. I've won the 6 hour 3 times. I've won a bunch of national races, and I've won a bunch of Continental Tire Series races here. So probably getting close to the double digits here.
That's a phenomenal record. I even noticed you had to pause because you had so many to think of. What are your chances this weekend? And tell us about your car.
Well, my chances were kind of careful coming in here. What I thought about what we do, I was always ambitious about what we do anytime we ever come to the Glen. But we just finished the first session P1, so that's a really good start. This is the first time that the Acura NSX is actually on the ground at Watkins Glen. It's the very first time. We didn't get a chance to test here with a bunch of other teams, so to go straight out and be P1, I'm really excited. My first race here was in 1995. There was a huge Winston billboard over the over the front straightaway up there, and the Nazareth grandstands weren't even here. The old style curving was here. It's changed a lot, but what hasn't changed is the way that this track races. This track races better than any other in the planet on the planet, in my opinion. It is my favorite track, hands down. I can't stand hairpins, and you don't have any hairpins here. The closest thing is a really fast third gear boot with a massive elevation change in it. So there's nothing boring about any single turn on this track. It races well, it drafts well, you've got big braking zones, you've got super fast corners with elevation changes in between, you've got transitions, you've got a really fast bus stop transitioning into a really fast sweeping outer loop. I love the long course and the short course. Yeah, I'd love to run the short course again.
Well, you know, when you say anything but boring, to me, going into turn 6, downhill, narrow, little off camber, do you like that turn, or just pretending it?
Nobody loves that turn, but I like that turn from a standpoint of once you're like halfway through your stint and your tires are just starting to wear off. If you're in the middle of a battle with 2 or 3 other cars, that's where you first start to see guys back things up. And if you can find the right line, and that groove changes throughout the race, probably more than any other groove around the whole track. You'll start out going in a little bit early, and as it rubbers up, you'll move offline a little bit to square it off. And I probably shouldn't be saying that if any of the competitors are watching, but there's a lot of different ways around that corner once it gets rubbered in. And then if it rains, forget about it. It's one of the scariest corners in motor racing because you're coming downhill so steep into a corner that you know you have to rim shot around the outside for the most grip, and you've only got about 2 feet of grass before the guardrail there. And at the exit, you've got very wet paint on the curbing, so there's very, very little room for error there.
Have you ever driven around the original track that ran here from 48 to 52?
I have. I've actually walked most of it, to be honest, just to kind of check things out. I'm a street luger and a downhill skateboarder at the same time, and I was actually scoping out some hills to see what we could run down, and it would be so cool to run portions of the old track right before it comes into town. It's very steep there, and I can't imagine those guys with lap belts and open cockpit, no roll cages back in the day. Insanity. I mean, people think we're crazy for doing 175 miles an hour around here with the top of the line safety technology for sports car racing, at least. Those guys back in the days, they were mad.
With the skinniest tires imaginable, tiny drum brakes, some cases mechanical brakes. It was quite something. You're a big fan of this area because you grew up in New York City?
I grew up on Long Island, about half an hour outside of New York City, in a little town called Northport. I bounced between Amityville and Northport as I was growing up. I am a big fan of this town. Everything from the Wildflower Cafe right down on Main Street to the Harbor Inn Hotel, which is my favorite place to stay down there. The cool little bakeries and for me, the ice cream parlors that are right down there. I'm dairy free, so there's 3 ice cream parlors that are all dairy free down there, and boy, what a cool little town. And then right outside of town, you've got the Farm Sanctuary, which is one of the coolest places to visit if you've never been to Watkins Glen before.